बघलेले सगळे फटाके प्रिया
हा पूर्वा मी
हा मी
शेअर करू स्क्रीन.
हा करा आता होणार हे शानू
झाली.
हो 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 परफेक्ट.
ओके मी थांबा 1 मिनिट त्याच्यावर टाकते.
परफेक्ट परफेक्ट. सानू ते डॉक्टर आंटी ओरडणार. ते बघ
हाय हॅलो. हे बघ
परफेक्ट
हे बघ
परफेक्ट.
पूर्वा.
हा
हे बघ.
परफेक्ट परफेक्ट. ओ ते बघ स्वरा. हाय कुट्टी. अरे किती क्यूट आहे स्वरा बघितलं.
स्नो.
अरे मुझे लग रहा है खूप छोटा.
ह्याचं नाव स्नो आहे. स्नो
काय
स्नो
स्नो.
मला तेच कळलं.
तुझ्यासारखा ती बोलते माझ्यासारखा छोटा आहे.
हा खूप खूप छोटा आहे.
लहान आहे तो आता.
तिथे काय खातात बोल.
हाय हाय.
काय खातात ते? तुम्ही तिथे काय
हाय.
करता?
ओके ऐक ना स्क्रीन
बोला
शेअर
ना.
होतीये ना.
हो
होतीये ना?
परफेक्ट परफेक्ट.
हा.
व्हॉइस पण क्लिअर आहे. एव्हरीथिंग इज परफेक्ट.
ओके ओके
ओके
चलो
चल थँक्यू बाय. किती खुश झाली. हो ती खूप
क्यूट आहे
खुश.
तो. तिला आवडतात का डॉग्स?
हो है ना?
हाय काय नाव आहे तुझं? आ, तू दिसतच नाहीयेस मला.
अरे
ही दिसली अरे हे बघ तुला बघायचंय का?
शी इज माय डॉटर.
हा
स्वरा
अच्छा अच्छा. हाय.
किती क्यूट आहे बघ तो. तो करतोय तसं ही पण त्याला जीभ दाखवते. चला
ओके
लाईट
करूयात
मुळे
मग.
डोकं फिरलं घाई
अगं
झाली
हो
माझी. आणि
शेजाऱ्यांचा वायफायचा पासवर्ड घेतलाय मी. कॅन यू इमॅजिन.
बेस्ट ऑफ लक. चांगलं होईल. डोंट वरी. बाय.
थँक्यू.
डॉक्टर सरिता
हा
अ, तुम्हाला काय चेक करायचे स्क्रीन वगैरे काय? 4 वाजता आपण ऑन टाइम सुरू करूया.
शेअर होत आहे ना?
हा प्रॉपर दिसतंय. ते क्लिक टू ऍड टायटल मध्ये दिसतंय ते हाईड करा किंवा डिलीटच करा direct.
मिनिमाइज.
प्रॉपर दिसतंय. सेकंड स्लाइड दाखवा ना. प्रॉपर परफेक्ट.
हॅलो
हा शेअरिंग स्टॉप करू मी?
हॅलो
हा तुम्ही शेअर स्टॉप करा.
हॅलो डॉक्टर सरिता.
या
Dr. Priya here.
या मॅम.
Hi. We've decided not to present that case, okay?
Okay.
Because it was not fitting in this time period and somebody has a commitment, no?
Okay,
We're not presenting it. I'll just finish my presentation exactly in time.
fine.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
प्रिया मॅडम.
बोला ना.
हा आपण ऑन टाइम सुरू करूया.
हो मी आहे लॉग्ड इन.
आता 7 मेंबर्स आहेत. मी एकदा ग्रुपवर मेसेज टाकते, मग जॉईन होतील.
चालेल. ओके.
other people.
No.
Okay. Should I start?
This is best of them, right?
Priya has joined.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I'm here.
Okay. So we'll wait for 2-3 minutes. There are only 13 participants.
Okay.
डॉक्टर सरिता
Yeah.
बिंदू मॅडम कदाचित कनेक्ट होतील की नाही माहित नाही पॉवर इश्यू आहे सगळीकडेच सध्या
Okay.
आज त्यामुळे पॅनलवर येतील की नाही माहित नाही त्या ट्राय करतील
Dr. Paraga has joined, so you can make him the co-host. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Rahul.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Start one, huh?
राहुल भी स्क्रीन शेअर करून बघू का?
Go ahead. Yeah. Sir. Dr. Sarita?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can start now.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all the delegates and the audience. Today's topic of CME is role of progesterone in obstetrics. As we all know, progesterone is a very important hormone which supports pregnancy. So this CME is a very nice opportunity to clear all our doubts about the role of progesterone in obstetrics, like what are the various conditions in which progesterone support is required, and oral versus vaginal progesterone, which route is better. So we have got various experts in the field of obstetrics and gynecology to clear all our doubts today. So let's make use of this opportunity and let's begin with this session. If anyone has any queries, please feel free to put it in the chat box. Question and answer session will be taken at the end of both the topics. So let's begin with the first talk, which is on prediction of preterm labor. I'll start sharing my screen.
Before we start with the talk, on behalf of NMOGS, we would like to welcome all the faculty, Dr.
Yes.
Priya, Dr. Parag, and all the panelists on the panel, Dr. Surabhi, Dr. Bindu, Dr. Uday Khanawala, and Dr. Pratik Tambe, who will be moderating the session. And I thank Sun Pharma Spectra Division for supporting this scene. Over to you, sorry.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So today, the first talk is on prediction of preterm labor, role of cervical length as a screening tool. And the speaker for the same is Dr. Priya Deshpande. She is a fetal medicine consultant and has done her fellowship in fetal medicine from Bangalore Fetal Medicine Center. She is practicing in various hospitals in Navi Mumbai and Mumbai like Motherhood, Apollo Hospitals and Hiranandani. Her special interests include fetal intervention and fetal therapy. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Sarita, for your kind introduction. Can I
I'll
share my
stop.
screen? Yeah. Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So, first of all, a very good afternoon to all our viewers, and really appreciate each one of you who has taken time out of your busy OPD schedule to attend our webinar today. At the outset, I would like to thank Navi Mumbai Obstetrics Society for giving me this opportunity to present my talk. Now, today's topic is extremely important, especially in today's times, as we know that progesterone is the most abused medication in pregnancy, almost to the level that it is used indiscriminately. And let us now have a look at how do we predict preterm labor and prevent it, and what is the actual role of progesterone in doing so. And I would want to stress upon the fact that how do we predict it by cervical length screening on ultrasound. So as WHO has defined a preterm birth to be before 37 completed weeks of gestation. Now we know that preterm birth is a major public health problem in terms of neonatal morbidity, mortality, and health economics. Every year, about 1 million babies die from prematurity, and many survivors are disabled. The global preterm rate is almost close to 11% worldwide, and the global burden of disease of preterm birth disease showed that preterm birth was fifth in the leading causes of burden over time. So all these factors press upon the fact that we need to address this issue and act in time. Despite great medical advances in preventing maternal and infant mortality in last century, one issue still remains. What's the best strategy to reduce this rate and improve the neonatal outcome? Now, essentially, two reasons are responsible for failure to reduce the preterm birth. One is absence of effective screening tests to identify the women at high risk. Second is lack of an effective intervention at the right time to prevent the complication. A rational prediction has an explanation which is based on theory. So what's the theory? How do we assess the risk for preterm labor? We take into consideration two main points. One is the clinical history. Second is the cervical length. Now, history we know is the strongest predictor of preterm birth. History of previous late miscarriage and history of previous preterm birth gives as a high recurrence rate of as high as 32% in the coming pregnancy. Now, coming to the cervical measurement part. Cervical insufficiency we know is a noteworthy entity and is associated with lots of controversies. A mid-trimester cervical length assessment is done by a transvaginal probe and a cutoff of 25 millimeters is taken. Now, why this cutoff in particular 25? Because it corresponds to 10th centile of the measurements in this gestational group. This chart shows us as the cervix shortens from 25 to 5 millimeters, there is exponential rise in the risk of preterm birth from 1% to 78%. And cervical assessment on ultrasound ticks all the boxes for an ideal screening method. Why? Because it is easy to learn. Ultrasound is available in most of the places. It is cost effective and acceptable to most of the pregnant women. Now, these are various organizations, the Society of Maternal Fetal Medicine, ACOG, International Society of Ultrasound and OBG, ISUOG, and the Society of Gynecologists of Canada. So the consensus, especially the SMFM and ACOG, give a grade A, that is strong recommendation to screen high-risk women at 16 to 24 weeks by transvaginal ultrasound. Now, what do we mean by high risk? Who have a positive history of prior spontaneous preterm birth or late miscarriage. ISUOG recommends screening every twin pregnancy by assessing the cervical length. 25 millimeters is taken as the cutoff. However, all of the societies mention that there is insufficient evidence to recommend a routine transvaginal cervical length measurement in an unselected population. That is, doing a transvaginal scan in each pregnant women at mid-trimester to measure the cervical length. That's called as universal cervical length screening. Now, this was recommended by only one society, which is the FIGO Working Group of Best Practice. They say that you should universally screen all the pregnant women by doing the mid-trimester transvaginal ultrasound measurement of the cervix. This paper, published recently in 2019, showed that implementation of universal screening, this was one of the first clinical studies, and the results which they presented was that the screen positive pregnancies which were screened doing a transvaginal cervical ultrasound and found to be short and further treated by progesterone, they found that 20% decline in preterm birth in less than 34 weeks of gestation, and a significant 27% decline in the rate of preterm birth before 32 weeks of gestation. So these recent studies prompt us to think that we should universally screen each and every pregnant woman at the time of anomaly scan by transvaginal scan and take the cervical length measurement. Now, this is a program called as CLEAR. Now, why was this launched? So that we as ultrasonographers should know what is the exact and the accurate method of measuring the cervix. So it has laid down certain guidelines, the cervical length education and review program. This was created in 2011 by Perinatal Quality Foundation. It standardized the measurements of cervix, and most of the organizations like ACOG and SMFM have accepted it and have started using it in their usual screening protocol. Now, these are the 9 criteria and the things to consider. I will discuss all of this in detail in my coming slide. So as we've discussed, we know there are three approaches: transabdominal, transperineal, and transvaginal. Transvaginal is considered to be the gold standard way to assess, and this also it is highly reproducible, and it is unaffected by maternal obesity, cervical position, also shadowing from the fetal part. TVS is found to be more sensitive method. So this is the preferred gold standard approach. This is a video which demonstrates a transvaginal scan, and I will just enumerate the steps which have to be followed according to the clear guidelines. First of all, the woman has to empty her bladder. She should lie in dorsal lithotomy position. The ultrasound probe with a proper probe cover has to be introduced in the vagina and directed in the anterior fornix, like we see here. Now, care should be taken that we do not exert undue pressure on the cervix, which will compress the lips of the cervix, and it will artificially increase the length. So we have to withdraw the probe a bit so as the anterior as well as posterior lips of cervix are seen with equal thickness. And a sagittal view of the cervix is obtained. Now, how do we identify? We can identify it by visualizing the endocervical canal, which is seen as this hypoechoic line bordered by a slight hyperechoic line of the endocervical gland. Now, calipers have to be placed exactly at the internal and external os. It is extremely important to identify the internal os. What is the landmark? First of all, internal os lies at the level of the UV fold anteriorly, and it is seen as a V-shaped structure. The external os is seen as a V-shaped triangular echogenic structure, and we can see both lips of the cervix, anterior as well as posterior, near it. So this is the way in which we recognize the internal and external os and take linear measurements of the cervical length. Now, ideally, every transvaginal cervical examination has to be done over a period of 2 to 3 minutes, or ideally 5 minutes, because cervix is a dynamic structure and it undergoes changes with our probe movements and slight pressure on the fundus. So whatever changes are about to happen, they happen, and the final shortest measurement is taken into consideration for risk assessment. Now, this method has found to be accurate and reproducible in 95% of cases, and inter and intra-observer difference in measurement has found to be as less as just 3 to 4 millimeters. Cervical stress test is an additional test which can be performed in cases where we have a doubt that we can give a slight pressure on the uterine fundus and check for any funneling or shortening of the cervical length. This is just an aid. We do not do it normally. Now, this video demonstrates the process of cervical incompetence, how the cervix opens from the internal os into the canal and the external os, and there is protrusion of the amniotic membrane along with the fluid. In worst cases, this protrusion is seen in the vaginal cavity. Now, this is a good animated video, but this is how it is seen on the ultrasound imaging. We know the Trust Your Vaginal ultrasound is a mnemonic for TYVU shape, which we see along the as the cervical incompetence progresses. So T is the normal shape of the closed cervix. Y is seen when we start seeing this funnel like this. When the funnel deepens, the Y becomes the V, and then finally a U-shaped structure is seen when both the lips are separated. Now, this need not be a sequence always, but it's just a description which was given by Professor JNT long back in 2001. Now, what is this hourglass cervix? Hourglass cervix is the extreme condition where the membranes are seen protruding in the vagina. Now, this is a real-time image of one of our patients where the os was completely open, and we can see the bag of membranes protruding in the vaginal cavity. Well, nothing can be done when we see this kind of situation. Now, a few special cases. Well, they're just a little special cases where we should note the key points to assess the cervix, but they are actually seen very much in common. The first is curved cervix. Now, when we see a cervix like this, is almost C-shaped in structure. And if we take a linear measurement from internal to external os, then the measurement is going to be shorter than what it actually is. And once we trace it like this, is the actual measurement. So from the clinical point of view, we should just note that cervix, which is short, is almost always straight. And when we see a curved cervix, we are almost, in most of the cases, reassured that it is not a short cervix. Now coming to the feature of funneling. What is funneling? Funneling is protrusion of amniotic membranes into the cervical canal along with the amniotic fluid, and it is considered not to be an independent risk factor for spontaneous preterm delivery. So after funneling, the residual cervical length, which is seen and measured, is the only parameter on which we base our risk assessment, and that has to be taken into consideration. Coming to the next feature, which is amniotic fluid sludge. Sometimes we see an echogenic aggregate which is close to the internal os or within the funnel. That is called as amniotic fluid sludge. Now, what exactly is it? It is microbial invasion of amniotic cavity and histological chorioamnionitis. Now, when we see this, the risk of spontaneous preterm delivery is quite high. So, sludge is an independent risk factor for spontaneous preterm delivery and preterm rupture of membrane. Now coming to multiple pregnancies. We know multiple pregnancies is an inherent high-risk entity for preterm delivery. And there are iatrogenic reasons of increased preterm delivery, like conditions of preeclampsia, FGR, TKTS, which complicate twin pregnancies commonly. However, the spontaneous preterm deliveries happening in multiple pregnancies have a different mechanism as compared to singleton. Now, this happens most probably due to additional uterine distension and secretion of hormones like corticotropin-releasing hormone and so on from the large placental mass, which stimulates myometrial contractility. And that's why we have to routinely screen all multiple pregnancies by transvaginal scan, and that is a good practice point and recommended by most of our societies. This study published in 2006 showed that in twin pregnancies, cervical length is far superior to history. So the length is the parameter which we have to consider, because history as it is categorized in a high risk. And the recent article, this was just published in 2020, it showed that serial measurements show a better performance than a single one in mid-gestation. And that's why we should follow up these cases every 2 to 3 weeks and keep doing the surveillance. Now, lots of research has gone into this topic. This is a vast topic of preterm labor, which is still so many issues are unresolved. And so many publications and papers have been published. But I would just like to mention a few of them which are clinically relevant. Now, this study was published by a group of Professor Nicolaides way back in 1998. They took a cutoff of 15 millimeters and they showed that it could accurately predict as high as 90% of preterm births below 28 weeks of gestation. The second paper in 2006, published by again Professor Nicolaides' group, showed that if we integrate the maternal history with the cervical length, then it gives us a substantially higher prediction rate as compared to when we are predicting with single factor alone. This is an interesting article which I came across, which was recently published in 2020. It shows us the time which was required, the additional time which was required to do a transvaginal scan in each and every mid-trimester. And they found that the average of 10 minutes was added to each ultrasound exam. And also, this time goes on diminishing with increasing experience of the operator. So, all these studies prompt us that we can consider universal screening of all pregnancies by transvaginal scan and measurement. Now, these studies which were published in 2008 and 2021 show that one size does not fit all, and we should ideally customize the risk for each pregnancy and for that each woman. And what we have to consider is the gestational age, maternal parity, height, weight, and then calculate a risk which improves the prediction to a higher accuracy. This app is called a SQUIP app. It is a clinical decision-making tool which helps clinicians to determine the risk of a woman, and it is individualized for that woman. It was created by King's College London. So This is how it looks. These are the 8-9 factors which are considered, and we have to enter the proper history once we open the app. That is symptoms suggestive of premature uterine activity, history of previous surgery, yes or no, previous preterm birth, yes or no, previous PPROM, number of fetuses in this pregnancy, the gestation, what is our cervical length measurement, and after we enter all of these factors and submit, we get a risk assessment score. And depending on that, we can then counsel the couple and also manage the case in a better way. This is a Fetal Medicine Foundation risk calculator, which is incorporated in our reporting software Astraya. Here again, we enter the measurement and enter whether fenneling is present or not. And then, all these factors are there which we can take. This is regarding the previous history. So once we put all of this information and calculate, we get the risk for preterm delivery calculated in this fashion. Now we get 4 parts, one before 28 weeks, 32 weeks, 34 weeks, and so on. And this exact rate can be then reported in the anomaly report, as well as taken help of in counseling the couple. Now, an interesting sign, the cervical sliding sign is reported to be seen in women who have impending preterm delivery. This paper was published recently in 2009. Here, in this video, we can see how the anterior lip of cervix is sliding on the posterior lip when we give gentle pressure by transvaginal probe, and especially has to be seen in short cervices of 10 to 20 millimeters. Now, why is this sliding happening? Because of softening of the cervix and reduced viscosity of the mucus plug, which are known to occur in early labor. Now, these are a few images which I wanted to show. This is, we can see this hypoechoic line across the cervical canal, which in between has a hyperechoic fine line. So this is a trilaminar sign which is present in a normal cervix. The hypoechoic is seen just because of the intra-canal mucus, the mucus which is there in the cervical canal. However, this is the actual dilated cervix, and we do not see any hyperechoic trilaminar sign here. So once an operator is trained properly and has a particular experience, we can differentiate between these two, and we know that the management changes drastically when we differentiate each one from the other. There are a few cases where we can overestimate the cervical length than what it actually is. Now, for instance, in over-distended bladder, this is a transabdominal scan where we can see an over-distended bladder. This is the cervix which is stretched because of the bladder distension. And if we measure the cervix in this fashion, we are going to over-measure it than what it actually is. Hence, the first step has to be carried out, that the patient has to empty her bladder, she has to relax, and then we have to measure the cervix in an appropriate way. Now, this is a common thing which happens, like I have explained. Once the pressure of the vaginal probe on the anterior cervix is given, then this stretches the cervical canal as it is seen in this video. And if we measure the cervix in this fashion, again, we are going to overestimate the cervical length. So we should withdraw the probe a bit and take it in a proper way as described before. We can also take help of the cervical stress test as mentioned in my previous slide. A few pitfalls. This is a transabdominal scan, and we can see how this hypoechoic shadow is falling exactly on the cervix, maybe because of the pubic bone or the bowel gas. So this is totally hindering the visualization of cervix, and in no way can anybody assess the cervical length. So once we are doing this, mostly is seen in the first trimester. So once we see something like this, we have to change our approach, do a transvaginal scan, and check the cervical length accurately. Now, this is a very common scenario. What happens here? The cervix is looking so long, extending from here to here, but in actual case, the cervical canal is only the lower half. The upper half is seen due to the lower uterine segment contraction. Maybe the woman has passed urine and come and has caused lower uterine segment contraction. So we can see this lower uterine segment contractions, and we should make a note that we are not measuring the cervix and we are not mistaking the internal os right here. We need to identify the internal os from the landmark, that is the anterior UV fold, and we have to look for the cervical canal ending here and the triangular shape to be to localize the internal cervical os. So my take-home messages for today are: transvaginal ultrasound is a gold standard to assess the cervix. Current threshold is 25 millimeters to identify short cervix. Individualized risk assessment is a better predictor, and we should take help of the apps and the softwares which are provided for this, for doing this. Short cervix is, of course, a strong predictor of preterm birth, especially in high-risk women. And all sonographers should be trained and updated to interpret the imaging, and we all should always follow the guidelines. So if we have to change our life, we have to do it now without any delay. I thank you all for a patient listening.
Thank you, madam. That was a very nice and informative talk with very crisp videos. Now for a second talk on the role of vaginal progesterone in preterm labor. Ma'am, have you stopped sharing?
Yeah, I've stopped sharing it.
So now for a second talk on role of vaginal progesterone in preterm labor, prophylaxis and treatment, I would like to invite Dr. Parag Binewale sir as a speaker. So Dr. Parag sir is a senior obstetrician and gynecologist practicing in Pune. He is a postgraduate teacher and unit head in Kamala Nehru Hospital. Sir is currently vice chairman of ICOG and a president-elect of Pune OBGY Society 2022-23. He has been a peer reviewer of a Journal of OBGY of India and has been a co-editor of various books and contributed various articles to books for the books and journals. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. I bring greetings from Pune, and it's indeed a pleasure to be part of today's CME and visiting Navi Mumbai Society virtually. I cannot forget the help of Navi Mumbai Society way back in 2008 when I was a young talent promotion committee chairperson, and I had one of my first workshops conducted in Navi Mumbai. Thank you, Rahul, Santosh, and the entire team for having me here. In next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about vaginal progesterone in prevention of preterm labor. This is something which all of us are following for last almost 2 decades now. We know that preterm birth is any delivery that takes place before 37 weeks of gestation, and it is estimated that there are 15 million preterm births, which also contribute to about 1 million neonatal deaths. We must not forget one very important fact, that India is probably the top contributors as far as the prematurity is concerned, and thus it is really important for all of us to understand, recognize and treat preterm labor. We all are aware about various causes of preterm labor, but today I'm just going to focus on one, that is a spontaneous preterm labor. This slide is a little blur, but it talks about common tocolytic agents which may be used for preterm birth, but I'm going to focus on progesterone. Progesterone is something which all of us have been using for years now for its various actions. We know that it has a good immunomodulatory action. We know that it helps in desidualization. It reduces myometrial contractility. And of course, it stimulates growth of uterus and stabilizes the endometrium. But what is important for us to understand in the endocrinology of pregnancy and parturition, and we know that it is the balance between estrogen and progesterone, the effect of these hormones is what is important in maintenance of pregnancy, and it also has a role to play in onset of labor. We know that progesterone is responsible for uterine quiescence and hence continuation of pregnancy. It also is responsible for cervical rigidity, which is again extremely important in order to prevent preterm labor. Progesterone has been used in obstetrics and gynecology for so many indications, but today I'm going to focus only on one, that is preterm labor and birth. Coming to the progesterone preparations, we can divide these preparations into natural and synthetic. All of us are using most of these products. Micronized progesterone is probably a natural one, which can be used orally, vaginally, intramuscularly, or even subcutaneously. Dihydrogesterone, medroxyprogesterone acetate, 17-alpha hydroxyprogesterone, etc., are also used for various indications in pregnancy. Now, coming to these natural progesterones, these are obtained from soybeans and Mexican yam roots. So they have a similar chemical structure as a physiological progesterone that is found in human body. What is the importance of micronization? It increases half-life of progesterone. It reduces its destruction in GI tract. That is important when we are administering it orally. It decreases the particle size, enhances dissolution, and maximum serum concentrations are achieved more rapidly with orally administered micronized progesterone than injectable one. So these benefits are important for the
I think we have lost, sir. I think sir will join back. I think we have lost his connection. Till then, if you have any questions for Dr. Priya, we can go ahead with that till sir joins back. I'll call him up also. You can take the question answers till then.
So we have one question for Dr. Priya, madam. It's from Dr. Himani Sharma, madam. Is os tightening in previous pregnancy a direct indication for cervical stitch in this pregnancy? Dr. Priya, ma'am?
Yeah. Is os tightening?
In previous pregnancy, a direct indication for cervical stitch in this pregnancy?
Well, os tightening must have been done in previous pregnancy because she had a short cervix, isn't it? So it ticks the high risk factor of the history part. So in this, we generally do not take decisions only on history. We can assess the cervical length. Yeah, but as Dr. Biniwale sir will take us through, the options for doing a cerclage or progesterone is always on the operator, because currently we do not have specific guidelines whether this has to be done or that has to be done. It depends on the operator, because many times it has seen that the results are same once we have done proper cervical surveillance and taken action at the appropriate time. So this is the treatment part, but I'm just sharing whatever knowledge I have on it.
I think Dr. Parag sir has joined back. So
Yeah, sorry, there was an electricity failure. I don't know what's happening. Can somebody make me co-host, please?
Purva, if you
You
can.
make a co-host, sir. Now it's working.
Yeah, it's done. Right, my apologies. All right, so progesterone formulations can be used vaginally. In fact, when it was introduced way back in 2002, primarily it was used vaginally, and of course it can be given orally, but the efficacy is less. Rectal use is also possible maybe a little uncomfortable, and of course the intramuscular use can also be there. Let's compare the natural versus synthetic progesterones. We know that natural micronized progesterone have no effects on mood, HDL cholesterol, and pregnancy outcome, wherein the synthetic progesterone, when administered, can have an impact on the moods. It decreases HDL cholesterol and may adversely affect the pregnancy outcome, leave alone the fluid retention part of it. And the reported side effects of progesterone include micronized progesterones can produce some amount of fatigue and somnolence. Generally, the vaginal route does not produce these side effects, and the synthetic ones definitely are responsible for bloating, depression, anxiety, irritability, edema, etc. How about safety of natural micronized progesterone? Now it is classified as category B, and we know that it does the treatment with progesterone does not increase the risk of congenital birth defects. What are the advantages of using it vaginally? Because initially we all use whatever progesterone that were available orally, and when in 2001 the micronized progesterone came, some studies cropped up saying that it is really useful when you give it vaginally, especially for prevention of preterm birth. So whenever we are administering vaginal progesterone, it is definitely comfortable and effective in a lot of patients. Of course, they need good counseling. Higher uterine progesterone concentration are noted. Now here, the uterine first pass effect is important, and the liver is totally bypassed. There is countercurrent exchange in progesterone transport between anatomically closed blood vessels. So whenever we are administering it vaginally, what is expected is the drug is delivered in the vagina, probably close to the cervix, and there is migration through the cervical tissue and lower segment of uterus up to the fundus. So what is the benefit of uterine first pass effect? So there is countercurrent transfer of progesterone from vaginal veins to uterine arteries, transport through the cervix, transport of progesterone from lymphatics and venous circulatory system, and there could be direct diffusion of progesterone from vagina to the uterus. And this is what is expected within 4 hours, where it is expected that there is progressive diffusion of progesterone from the cervix to the fundus of the uterus, and that is what is responsible probably for a quick action of this particular drug by this modality. So vaginal administration ensures stable progesterone concentration in the endometrium when the serum levels are low. So there is reduction in the risk of systemic effects. What are the advantages of vaginal route over intramuscular? It is convenient, acceptable to the patients. It does not hurt or require any special instrument or a trained healthcare provider to administer it, and it rarely produces allergic reactions. Coming to the risk factors of spontaneous preterm births. Now, when we talk about risk factors, there are some modifiable factors and there are some non-modifiable factors. The modifiable risk factor like cigarette smoking, illicit drug use, anemia, bacteriuria, lower genital infections, all these can certainly be looked into. Counseling before patient plans her conception is important. Detecting these conditions, treating anemia, treating urinary tract infections, or even in pregnancy, it is prudent that we detect these infections early and treat it in order to have a better outcome. But the non-modifiable factors are the ones where we have to put all our efforts and we have to go all out to give whatever best possible treatment in order to prevent preterm birth. So if there is a history of prior preterm birth is probably one of the most important factors. Premature cervical dilatation of more than 2 centimeters. We know that preterm births are common in extremes of ages, poor nutrition, low socioeconomic status, poor antenatal care, and so on and so forth. Of course, there are some uterine anomalies or over-distended uterus which could also be responsible for preterm birth. So let's talk about prior preterm birth. And when we talk about a prior preterm birth, we know that there is a very high chance of preterm delivery in subsequent pregnancy. And how does progesterone work in prevention of preterm birth? So in these women, what we expect is the administration of progesterone will help maintaining the uterine quiescence. So the uterine activity is diminished. Anti-inflammatory and immunosuppression property also helps. Its impact on cervical trauma, and of course the autocrine or paracrine effects. Coming to the inflammation, progesterone 17 progesterone and MPA reduced TNF alpha induced capsis reactivity. It also inhibits NFK beta induced activation of COX2 induced uterine contractility, and thus progesterone protects chorion cells from oxidative stress induced apoptotic cell death. The cervical changes which precede labor, where there is ripening of cervix because of decreased collagen content, increased collagen solubility, and increased collagenollytic activity. So all these factors are opposed when we are using progesterone. So the influx of inflammatory cells into the cervix and preterm birth is often preceded by cervical ripening over weeks. Progesterone itself reduces the mediators of inflammation and hence prevents tissue destruction. There is blockage of 17 beta estradiol induced collagen degradation. So all in all, it works well with its impact on the cervix as well as the quiescence on the uterus. So this is the algorithm which all of us are following when we talk about short cervical length. So when the short cervical length is identified on transvaginal ultrasound, I'm not going to talk about it much. Dr. Priya has explained it beautifully. So if we are dealing with a multiple gestation, we know that no intervention has been shown to improve outcomes. So whatever we offer these women is probably empirical, and it may or may not work. But what is important is to offer the right thing for women who have singleton pregnancy. And if there is no history of prior spontaneous preterm birth, we would administer vaginal progesterone supplementation, especially so if the cervical length is less than 20 millimeters and the duration of pregnancy is 24 weeks or less. If there is a prior spontaneous preterm birth and if the patient is already receiving progesterone supplements in 16 weeks of gestation, here cerclage should be considered, especially if the cervical length is less than 25 millimeters before 24 weeks of gestation and prime preterm birth occurred at less than 34 weeks of gestation. So here we have to use the progesterone vis-a-vis cervical cerclage judiciously and offer the right thing to the right patient. Now, this was a study which was published in Journal of Maternal and Fetal and Neonatal Medicine, which talks about use of vaginal progesterone as a maintenance therapy in women with arrested preterm labor. Now, what they did was they included women who had established preterm labor, prophylactics were administered, and then administration of progesterone was done. And what they concluded was daily administration of 400 milligrams of vaginal progesterone after successful parental tocolysis may increase latency preceding delivery and improve cervical shortening and neonatal outcome in women with preterm labor. Of course, more studies are warranted, but this is something which we can keep in mind and offer to our patients who come to us in established preterm labor. So the benefits of vaginal progesterone that were perceived included relaxation of myometrial smooth muscles. So there is